The reign of terror of Bill Belichick is officially over as the New York Jets win this one by the score of 17-3. The Jets end the season 7-10, much as the same as last year, winning 3 of the last 5. This is as mixed emotion. You knew going into this game, no matter what the result would be for the New York Jets, that it was going to be a mixed bag. We knew it was going to be a mixed bag because on the one hand, you wanted this team to have better draft position. On the other hand, you wanted to end this dopey streak. You wanted to end Bill Belichick's tenure on a loss in New England, and it looks like that is going to be the case. Pretty much, I mean, all the broadcast kept talking about was Bill Belichick, and like all the reports. And apparently the Patriots are going to have a Godfather-style meeting tomorrow to discuss Belichick's future. If I was a betting man, I think Belichick's future in New England is over. I think that they're going to need a complete overhaul. And according to Tankathon, as of this recording right now, the Patriots would be selecting second. However, I do believe if Washington loses, they would be picking second. That game's currently going on. Arizona as well later today. The good news for the Jets, though, is it does appear like at the very worst, because Chicago still has to play today and Las Vegas still has to play later today as of this recording, both at 4:38. I do think the chances of the Jets having a top 10 pick are still very good. I don't think they're going to drop all the way down to 12, but it looks like the Jets are likely going to have a top 10 pick in the upcoming draft. A lot of emotion we want to hear about from you. If you're joining us live, please give us a comment in the live stream. If you're joining us afterward, give your thoughts. And I know that there's going to be a mixed motion. I know this is going to be a mixed motion because you had a strong portion of the fan base that, of course, wanted to end this streak, just beat the freaking Patriots because it's been since 2015. And then you had the other part of the fan base that was caring about the draft order. And I'm a little bit mixed on that. Yes, would it help if the Jets had a higher pick? Sure. But at the end of the day, this isn't the Jets tanking to get the number 1 pick in the draft. It's not them trying to get a generational quarterback, number 1 overall. And this is a team, like, you know who their quarterback is going to be next year. It's going to be Aaron Rodgers. And there is a lot of headlines that were discussed in this game, especially around 2 players. One, I think, is pretty obvious what's going to happen with him. The other, I have a couple of thoughts. I was going to do a whole video on this player a little bit, so I'm not going to get too much into it, but there is a lot to dissect into today. But look, this was Breece Hall's game. Breece Hall, 1,500 yards, considering how bad the play calling and the offense has been, the offensive line. You figure if Breece Hall can get some offensive linemen in front of him, you figure if there's some chance that they can get some decent bodies up front, he could have a huge year next year. And look, this team, you saw Jermaine Johnson, another big game as well. This defense played exceptionally well. Again, Bailey Zappi and that Patriot offense is terrible. And look, I want to go off on a little bit and talk about the Patriots for a little bit. I know we're talking about the New York Jets. But I do know that I kept hearing this and seeing this fear online that the Patriots are going to all of a sudden reboot and reload. There's a couple of things I think that are working against the Patriots actually right now. Even hypothetically, let's say the Patriots get the number 2 pick. We saw it this year with the quarterbacks. Just because you're going to get one of the top 2 quarterbacks doesn't mean you're going to get the right one. You look, CJ Stroud was the right one. Bryce Young was not the right one. And look at the difference between those 2 organizations right now. The other thing, too, is I do think if the Patriots are going to draft a quarterback, they're going to completely gut the front office. But the question is, who's going to be the head coach? Are they going to go with like Jerron Mayo? Are they going to go with a former Belichick disciple? And if that's the case, I don't know how that's necessarily going to work. Are the Patriots going to be able to scout as well as they used to? Are they going to be able to bring in talent? And look, their offense, they have a good defense. But the questions you have about the Patriots are, number 1, are they going to be able to get enough good offensive pieces to be really competitive in this division next year? And number 2, Bill Belichick, say what you want about the last couple of years, this defense is always great. You take that mind out of Foxborough, how good's that defense really going to be? And look, I don't think it's that attractive of a job, if I'm honest. Even though the Patriots could get a top quarterback in this draft, and even if you're a top quarterback, you look at that division right now. Next year, the Jets are going to have that defense and Aaron Rodgers. You're in the division with Josh Allen. You're in a division with the Miami Dolphins. Like, for example, if you're Ben Johnson, are the Patriots really that attractive of the position? Are they really that attractive? I know Carolina, because of that whole mess with the front office, is really a mess, but I look at Washington, new ownership, going to have a top pick, some exciting young players on both sides of the ball. I think that's more attractive. I think that there's a lot more attractive. The Chargers with Herbert's a more attractive job. There's more attractive jobs than the New England one right now. And especially the other thing that you don't talk about too is being the guy after the guy. You never want to be the guy after Bill Belichick. You never want to be the guy after Tom Brady. You never want to be the guy after Don Shula. And I do think there's a lot of pressure with that. And despite the struggles of Belichick, you're constantly going to be compared to him. And I also think Belichick wants to go somewhere else. I think they're going to be separate. So everyone's saying, oh my God, the Patriots are going to be instantly back next year. The Patriots don't have a good roster. Like, name a dynamic player on that offense. Name a dynamic player on that defense, like especially that's really a top player in that division. I don't think they have a good roster, and it's going to take a while to rebuild New England. But let's get to the New York Jets. Lots to talk about. And I think the big storyline today is going to be the big one, which is Bryce Huff. And the Jets are in a really tough position, I think, right now with him, because I'm going to go into this more this week about some of my thoughts about this, but the Jets came in this year basically, I think, viewing Huff as a rotational piece. Huff has now come out and said he wants to be an every down end. And look, he has proven it this year. 10.5 sacks, double-digit sacks. He's going to get paid. Either the Jets are going to give him a bag or someone else is going to give him a bag. The biggest thing for the New York Jets is one of two things with Bryce Huff. The first and obvious is pay him. The one concern I have about paying him, though, is the defense has already invested 2 first-round picks on that defensive line. They've already paid Quinning. They're soon going to have to pay Sauce Gardner. DJ Reed, they're going to have to give a new contract next year. There's going to be certain players on that defense that you're going to have to spread the wealth out, and we're not even talking about the offense. Can't imagine how much they're going to have to spend on receivers this offseason, offensive line. So you wonder if Huff plays into the budget a little bit. But here's my biggest thing to Joe Douglas. For Bryce Huff, you have to either keep him or get something for him. I'll go into this more in detail as the offseason progresses. But look, the first thing is pay him. Give him a contract. And if it doesn't work and he's going to go to free agency, you franchise tag him. You cannot let him walk out the door. And if you franchise tag him and he's unhappy, you trade him. Because the Jets could trade him. And I do think there will be a team out there that could give you a second-round pick. Maybe the Jets have to kick in a 6th-rounder to sweeten the pot. But I do think that there will be a team that will look at Bryce Huff, an ascending mid-20s pass rusher with double-digit sacks last year, and look at him as an every-down player and say, you know what? We're not going to get that kind of guy in the 2nd round anyways. We'll give the Jets a 2nd-round pick. And I know before everyone kills me, there is an idea that it makes sense for the Jets to trade Huff. Now, look, I get it. I want him to stay here too, but the Jets have Jermaine Johnson, who's an ascending player and under team control. They have McDonald, who's shown some flashes, and I do think that the Jets believe they can really develop. And the one thing I will say about this coaching staff, I don't trust them in a lot of areas, but on the defensive side, they have shown the ability to really develop players. Offense, I don't trust them. Defense, maybe there's someone they like 3rd or 4th round as a pass rusher in the draft that they can develop. I'm okay with that. But here's the thought I had. If the Jets could somehow not keep Huff, but turn him into a useful piece, because there's 2 things that are more valuable than a pass rusher in the NFL today. And it's a short list, but it's offensive line and it's quarterback. If the Jets can get a 2nd-round pick, you can still find a capable starting offensive lineman in round 2. But more importantly and more interestingly, looking at this draft, I don't think the Jets want to use a 1st-round pick on a quarterback. As much as the idea of Michael Penix sitting there on the board or Jaden Daniels sitting on the board there is really appealing, if I'm the Jets, I'm looking in round 2. Because I do think there's going to be a couple of quarterbacks that could fall around 2. I think a great example is Bo Nix. I think Bo Nix could be technically sitting there in round 2 and available for the taking. And it's a situation where you use round 1 to get a big piece, an offensive lineman, but at the same time, you can use round 2 to get that future quarterback. So I would really look into that. I would really try to go and look at that as much as I can. Another thing, too, is I would look at maybe some injured quarterbacks in this draft. Look, Jordan Travis from Florida State. I think if you could get him in round 2, again, it's a lot to pay up to go and get a quarterback. But if they believe Jordan Travis, for example, is a franchise quarterback and they can turn Bryce Huff into a franchise quarterback. And look, I get it. You don't want to give up on a great pass rusher. But if the Jets turn let me look at it from this angle. And again, you guys can scream and yell at me in the chat. If the Jets can take an undrafted player and turn that into a potential 10-year starting offensive lineman or a franchise quarterback that they can develop, it was completely worth it. Now, look, I'm not saying you just give up. Like, the one thing I don't want, don't let him walk. Don't let him walk off the door. You franchise tag him before he gets out the door, Joe Douglas. But if you're not going to pay him and keep him on this roster, you need to turn him into something valuable for this team. I see a couple questions coming up. We'll get to that in a sec. But another thing I want to touch on was Zach Wilson's future. They said multiple times in the broadcast, and I wasn't surprised. Zach Wilson and Diana Rossini reported in again. Then I love these reporters too. It's like if the Jets had won this game, if the Jets lost this game, it'd be like, of course, the dopey Jets. Like, this is the one thing I hate about the national media. Of course, the dopey Jets lost another game to the Patriots. But of course, since they win, of course, the Jets screwed up their drafting. Like, it's only the Jets they love to point this stuff out with. But Zach Wilson, I think, is gone. And basically, from every reports, they're going to trade him in the offseason. Now, I don't believe the Fields rumor. It doesn't make any sense. It's going to cost a lot. I think they're going to look to draft someone. One guy I really would like to keep an eye on, I'll go more into this with our mock drafts. I really like Tua's brother in round 3 or 4 if he's available. But he's a guy I would keep an eye on. I think you can develop him as well. But Zach Wilson, I do think, is going to give this team a draft pick. There's going to be a team, and again, not a great draft pick, but a 5th or 6th rounder I could see. And look, I could see a couple teams in the NFC that makes sense. I could see the Jets just trying to get him to any team. I think preferably out of the AFC so they don't have to face Wilson. And I was really thinking there's a couple teams in the NFC that kind of makes sense. And I tweeted this earlier. One of the teams I think makes a lot of sense is the Minnesota Vikings. Vikings have an offensive coach. They're in a division with 2 young quarterbacks, Jared Goff, and also with Jordan Love. Maybe it's a place where he can develop. I think that small market would be very good for Zach. I could see them giving up a pick. Another team, the Philadelphia Eagles. I know a lot of people are going, why the Eagles? Well, the Eagles have a relationship with Joe Douglas. He came from that system. But the other thing, too, is Hurts has played really well, but he plays a physical style of football. You need a backup quarterback that can come in and play. And to me, Zach Wilson could maybe be a good backup for them as well. I also look at Seattle. I mean, we've seen the Seahawks look at reclamation projects. I mean, they already took one from the Jets and Geno Smith. I mean, I could see them looking possibly at Zach Wilson. I mean, one team I would not trade him to is the Rams. I mean, I think the Rams could look at because Stafford's getting up there. But if anyone could figure out Zach Wilson, I think it's Sean McVay. But I do think there's going to be a market, and I do think that there's going to be teams. And look, the Jets need draft picks. We know they don't have a 2nd-round pick going into this year. And look, even if they get a 5th or 6th-round pick and they can turn that into a depth piece. I mean, they turned a 7th-round pick into Clark, who I really think is going to be a starting safety for this year once he recovers from the ACL surgery. You can get a starting caliber player, maybe not a lineman, but you could get a nice rotational piece, a depth piece. Maybe they swing it into a defensive tackle. It gives you a lot of options, but let us get into it. I think Joe has a strong opinion. Bo Nix is the future bust. Look, I'm just throwing out Joe a couple ideas. I think Nix could be an interesting project. I think Quinn Ewers can be I'm not taking the 1st round, but 2nd round, you're not losing your franchise on taking around 2nd-round pick with them as well. Trade down, grab J.J. McCarthy. Look, I don't think J.J. McCarthy's a franchise quarterback. I think J.J. McCarthy's a good quarterback, but for what the Jets need, you need a great quarterback. I don't think he's ever going to be a great quarterback. Huff and Ashton are must resigns. Look, Ashton, I think, is a must resign. He makes a lot of sense too. And I think it makes a lot of sense too because the Jets with their safety position, I think you can get Clark on a cheap deal. Adams has been a nice piece. He's cheap. Ashton Davis, I don't think is going to cost you an arm and a leg. Jordan Whitehead, I think, is better than we give him credit for as fans. But the problem with him is, I think, especially after all the interceptions this year, he's going to be in the prime of his career. This is his last chance for a big contract. I think he's going to look for a big contract. And look, with free agency, we see it all the time. We see good BB plus players get A plus money. And to me, Jordan Whitehead could be one of those guys this year because it's not really a great safety market. I could see him, some team that's desperate at safety, give him not Jesse Bates money, but close. Yeah, I think Zach Wilson's gone. Let's see. Darnold's comp was a second-round pick, fourth-round pick, sixth-round pick from Carolina. But look, Sam Darnold was a lot. Sam Darnold had better numbers and I think had shown more promise than Zach Wilson had. Look, I don't think Zach's getting this. You're not getting like, let's put this way. If Joe Douglas gets a day 2 pick for Zach Wilson, then the only way I can maybe see that is if it's Zach Wilson and like Zach Wilson and a fifth for a third, or Zach Wilson and maybe a fourth for a late second, maybe that way, Melvin. But let's put it this way. If they straight out trade him and get a second or third round pick and not, like for Zach Wilson, like I don't care what people think about Joe Douglas, build a freaking statue in front of the Atlantic Health Facility for pulling that one off. That'd be like when the Bears trade. Well, I'm trying to think, was it Rick? Oh, that's what it was. It was the Seahawks trade Rick Meyer to the Bears for a first round pick after he was a bust. And remember the Rick Meyer thing, they said he couldn't throw the football to the left side of the field. I mean, Jesus, that was bad. Yeah, you're lucky at a bag of balls. Our QB is 5 and high with 49 yards right now. Which one are we talking? Joe, just mention which quarterback you're talking about, just so I know. How do we fix the O-line? Very, very, very carefully. Look, I think the Jets, Bart Scott, I think, has made a really good point on the Jets show this week. And I do agree with him. He was comparing offensive lines to the Jets' great offensive lines in 2009, 2010. He says you have to draft 2 guys high and you have to pay 2 guys. Now, the question is, with Laken Tomlinson, if the Jets can get a better guard, I think they will cut him. But until they get one, they don't. Look, they've already invested in the center and Joe Tippmann. I think they invest a high pick in an offensive line for a tackle this draft. Look, there's 3 or 4 really good tackles in this draft. There's the 2 blue chips, but there's still 2 good ones right after them. And I still think you can get one of them. The problem is going to be free agencies. Now, if I'm the Jets, what I would try to do is go after Smith from the Cowboys. It's going to cost a lot of money, but the one thing about that is you can probably get it on a 1-year deal. If you can get him to be your left tackle, you draft a tackle to play right tackle, you keep AVT at the guard position, you have Tippmann. Could you survive with Laken Tomlinson? Sure, but I'd still be looking at the offensive line. Look, there's some really intriguing free agents this offseason for the NFL. Like, I think that there's a couple of good offensive linemen that I would keep an eye on. One guy I would also really keep an eye on too, like, actually, I'll get to that. Like, we'll do a whole free agency thing. Like, I'll talk about receivers too, but I'm just going to stay with the offensive line right now. And there's a couple of really good ones I think that are coming out. One I would really keep an eye on for this offseason, if I'm honest. Like, one guard I really would want, if it's possible, I would really try to go hard after like Robert Hunt from the Dolphins. I think especially with the Dolphins playing the system, it'd be a lot. Mike Onwenu from New England, he's bounced around, but he's in his mid-20s. Now, another interesting thing about the offensive line, and I'm sorry, I see a lot of comments coming. I'll get to you, but I think Mr. Magic brings up a great point. One interesting thing Samini pointed out today was Mekhi Becton saying he wants to come back and play with Aaron Rodgers. Now, again, I think it's a possibility, but there's two problems, I think, with Mekhi. Number one, the Jets cannot guarantee him a spot next year. And number two, the biggest thing with Mekhi is will a team give him a long-term deal? I think if the Jets are in play for Mekhi, it's a 1-year prove-it deal. The problem is, and the two biggest problems I have with Mekhi coming back are the following. Number one, I don't think this coaching staff really loves Mekhi. They've pretty much made it clear since day one they didn't love the work ethic. It just has never felt like a good mesh between this coaching staff and Mekhi. The other thing, too, with Mekhi is he was the most penalized offensive tackle and given up the most sacks for offensive tackle. For me to save his career, one of two things needs to happen. He needs to really continue to get in great shape and play specifically right tackle. But I almost feel like at this point, he's better as a guard. Like if he can be a right guard, like if you can convince Mekhi Becton, here's the plan. We'll bring you back, but you're playing right guard. We put AVT at left guard. You're a right tackle. You're a right guard this year. We don't trust you at the tackle position, but we'll try you a guard. Like I think long-term Becton at this point needs to become a guard because I don't think he's got the feet to be a tackle. And again, he's great at run blocking. He's great at moving people, and having him in the middle of the line might be really beneficial. But at this point, I don't think Mekhi's coming back. All right, let's get to some more of these questions. You know what, Mel? I don't think you necessarily have to. I think they're going to try to trade for one. And there's some interesting free agent options I'd look at. Look, Odell Beckham's a free agent. Now, I know what you're going to say. I would need someone else, but Odell, it's clear he wanted to play with Rodgers. I'm not sure it's going to work on Baltimore. Maybe he wants to stay in Baltimore. But one guy I'd really look at is T. Higgins. If T. Higgins is a free agent, like he's one guy I would pay a ton for multiple reasons. Number one, he's in his mid-20s. He's ascending. He'd be a great number two. But the other thing as well is he's someone that can grow with this team. If you get a Devontae Adams, if you get a Mike Evans, they're right now in their prime. They're here for a 2 or 3 year window. And look, that's great. But at the same time, T. Higgins, you can make the case, could not only help this quarterback with Aaron Rodgers, but could be a major part of the plan with the next quarterback and be a long-term running mate of Garrett Wilson. Like this could be a 7-8 year tandem between the two. Like he is someone I would really want to pair with. And look, there's certain players I would not pay a ton for, but T. Higgins would be one player I would break the bank for. And especially because, again, I think the draft, they're going to have to focus more on the offensive line. Start 21, Zach with a bust. McCarthy's a franchise quarterback. Look, if you believe that, Joe, you're entitled to your opinion. I still think that McCarthy is a good quarterback. I think he can be successful. I just don't think he's got like as big of a ceiling as other guys. And look, if the Jets, and this is some breaking news from Connor Hughes. Connor Hughes was asking Huff after the game about the 10.5 sacks in the contract. Asked Huff if he'd give Jets a hometown discount to stay in New York. His quote, "There won't be any discount." He says he owes it to his family, those close to him, to take the biggest deal. Appreciate the honesty from Huff. Look, and I can't blame Huff. You have to remember, Bryce Huff is not a first-round pick. He's not. He was an undrafted free agent. He's basically playing for peanuts right now. He needs to take the biggest contract. And look, he's going to be in his 20s. He's coming off that sack year. I don't blame him. But my biggest thing with the Jets is you either going to pay him, or if you're don't let him get to free agency. You got to tag him. Like, you need to turn him into something. Like, if you're going to let him go, you got to get something back from him. I would tag and trade him. If you're not going to keep him, you're not going to give him that big contract, you can't just let him walk out the door for nothing. Brees was 6 yards from, yeah, but he got over 1,500 all-purpose yards, Melvin. And look, the fact that Brees Hall was 6 yards from 1,000 with this offensive line and this pitiful quarterback play, I mean, the fact that he's made it through a season off of an ACL with this offensive line, like if the Jets get a decent offensive line from him, can you imagine what he's going to be like next year? What's up, man? I don't love Tannehill as a quarterback too. My number one would be Jacoby Brissett. I also love Gardner Minshew. Like, I've been banging the table for the last 2 years for this team to get freaking Gardner Minshew. I want them to trade for Gardner Minshew. Look, I think Gardner Minshew is a starting 32 quarterback in this league. I think Gardner Minshew is basically what Baker Mayfield is. If you put him on a good enough team with enough pieces around him, he can get you to the playoffs. Now, is he going to propel you deep in the playoffs? Probably not. But is he someone that's going to keep this team competitive and keep your team in the game? Absolutely. Like, if I had a list, Brissett's number one, Minshew's number two. Minshew's probably harder because he's younger and probably will cost more, and someone might view him as a starter. But Tannehill, if I had to be honest, I think Tannehill would probably maybe 3. I just don't know how much football he has in life. I don't think so. I don't think they're going to keep Becton, because the problem with Becton is, Melvin, and like I just kind of went off, and I'll give you the quick summary. With Becton, here's my thought. Like, I could see him being a right tackle, but even as a right tackle, he was the most penalized tackle in the league. He still gave up a ton of sacks. My biggest thing is I almost feel like he'd be better off going to guard at this point, where you don't have to worry about necessarily having that great foot speed to stay with some of the smaller edge rushers. And look, if it's a great team, you put Becton on the right side, you know what they're going to do? They're going to put their best pass rusher over there on the other side. Like, if you have a guy like a Micah Parsons or something, or a great pass rusher, you don't think they're going to say, hey, I'm going to go over where Becton is and try to beat him. So I just think that I think guard will be the thing. And look, it only takes one. Free agency is always about this. It only takes one. There's going to be, I think, one coach that's going to look at Becton and go, I can make him a franchise right tackle. Maybe not left, but I believe in that potential. I believe in the upside. Look, they don't make that many offensive linemen. Someone's going to take a risk. Fix wide receiver. You can't go into the draft hoping to fill every roster hole like an offseason. Yeah. Is it Chayo Ihan? I'm so sorry I butchered that name. If you could give me a pronunciation in the chat, I'll do my best to get that. But yeah, to me, the Jets have to go into the draft with that minimum 2 offensive line spots filled and at least a receiver. Maybe not a number 2, but like, here's a hypothetical. Let's say the Jets signed Odell Beckham for a 1-year deal. So they'd be going in with Odell. They'd be going in with Garrett Wilson. They'd be going in with Allen Lazard, again, another healthy scratch, Xavier Gibson, and Brownlee. I mean, I'd like better receivers. Personally, if they got T. Higgins, I think that would be really what I would go for, is get T. Higgins. But if they got Odell, at least then there's a little pressure where it's like, okay, maybe they don't have to take one the first pick. But a lot of the free agency is going to determine, look, the Jets have to get an offensive lineman. And one of the things I'd look at too is, like, if there's a young guard you really love, pay the guard. Because if you can pay the guard, like, for example, like I was saying with the Dolphins guy, if you pay him, you can cut Lakin and then save a bunch of money because you already got your center. I mean, another option too is if you feel there's a great center out there. Tippmann was a really good guard. You can make the case. You get a center, you move Tippmann to left guard, you keep AVT at guard. I wouldn't fiddle around too much with AVT at tackle. I'd still keep him at guard but they need a tackle. Now, the question is, like, are there guys in free agency, like, I'll throw this name out there, George Fant. I know a lot of Jet fans are going to roll their eyes, but I don't think George Fant is going to cost you a ton of money. Again, will he want to come back here with this coaching staff? I'm not sure, but if you're telling me George Fant's your right tackle next year, I feel a whole lot better than I did coming into this season. And look, Carter Warren, I thought, played really well down the stretch. I think Carter Warren's shown some potential. Do I think he's going to be an all-world tackle? No, but do I think he's showing potential to be a starting or capable swing tackle? Sure. So as long as they can go out and get a big piece now, if they can go get the big tackle from Dallas and pay a ton of money at the left side, look, it's a 1-year deal, and then they draft like one of these kids high at the right tackle position to play the right tackle, I'd be fine with this. But look, I think they need to try to get a second-round pick back, but they need to, at some point, get a tackle. And look, for everyone that's going to kill Breece Huff, because I know this is going to happen, like, oh, he's greedy, he wants money, because this happens with fan bases, and I get it. He was an undrafted free agent. He's earned every single penny. And look, I think there's going to be a team that's going to give him a ton of money. I mean, look, the Jets gave Carl Lawson $15 million a year. Huff is younger. Huff's coming off a 10.5 sack season. Huff's coming off an insane pressure rate. There's going to be a team out there that's going to view him as an every down player. I think the Jets would be comfortable giving him $15 million a year. That's a lot, but I think the Jets would be comfortable. Problem is, I think, could a team give 18, 19, or 20? That's the thing. I just have this feeling there's going to be one team out there that's going to just blow everyone away, because it happens in free agency all the time. So if I'm the Jets, I'll go make another video about this, but I think their best thing is to tag and trade it. If we miss on the top 4 tackle, I would trade back and take a receiver. I don't think they're going to miss out on the tackles, because here's the other thing about the draft. We see this every single year. We know that Caleb Williams and Drake May are pretty much going to go 1 and 2, if not in the top 3. We're going to see, especially if Michael Penix plays great in this national championship, you're going to see a big push for him. You're going to also see Jaden Daniels. I think Jaden Daniels, when we get into the physicals, is going to be good. And I do think there's going to be people that are going to like J.J. McCarthy. But I think there's going to be a big 4. There's going to be Penix, there's going to be Daniels, there's going to be Williams, and there's going to be May. Now, the question is, based on how the board falls, who's going to fall to the Jets? Now, J.C. Latham, I like him as a tackle, but I'd be more comfortable as a right tackle to start a career than as my blind side. I mean, Amarius Mims, a lot of potential, but again, really big kid. I mean, I wouldn't mind trading back down for Fuaga. I think he's not a bad player as well. There's a lot of good tackles in this draft, but I don't think Latham is necessarily like, the problem is I think a lot of people are going to look like once you get past the first 2, it's terrible. But look, I do think that there's a chance that certain quarterbacks could go high. Now, I'm playing the hypotheticals, but let's look at this. Right now, the Jets are picking 9. Let's say the Jets pick 10. Now, again, it's hard to do this until the draft's completely sent, but Chicago's taking a quarterback. And if Chicago doesn't take a quarterback, they're going to trade that pick for a plethora for someone that wants a quarterback. New England probably going to take a quarterback. Washington probably going to take a quarterback. Now, I've been hearing all this stuff like, well, they really love Sam Howell. They really love Sam Howell. I think they need a reboot there. I think Howell's a decent quarterback, but if you have a chance to get a really great one, Arizona's the wild card to me. Because a part of me thought that they could go quarterback, but I think that they're going to still keep Kyler for at least another year or 2 at that contract. That's a team that could go tackle. But again, you got Marvin Harrison Jr. So the biggest question is then you have the Giants. They need a quarterback. Chargers are a team I think are going to take a tackle because they want to protect Herbert. Titans, again, do they love Will Levis? Do they want a quarterback? Do they want to try to give a weapon for Will Levis? They try to go offensive line. Atlanta, do they try to go get a quarterback? I mean, there's a lot of teams, like when I look at them, outside of the Chargers and maybe the Cardinals, of all the teams in front of the Jets, you can make the case, well, they can't completely rule out quarterback. They can't. Yeah, I agree with Audition. Give me some brisket. I love the good Irish spelling. So, hey, Kevin, how's it going? Good to meet you. If you have any more comments, again, guys, give us your comments in the live chat. If you're any Jet fans and want to bring to the channel, let us know, because we're going to have a lot of fun this offseason. I do full 7-round mock drafts, plenty of draft talk. Like, this is probably the time on my channel where most of my stuff comes and most of my great stuff comes. Because, look, I love the draft. The draft is my favorite thing to talk about, the favorite thing to cover. So there's going to be a lot of draft content coming your way. Make sure you hit that like and subscribe so you don't miss any of that. So we're going to have plenty of draft content, plenty of offseason stuff as well. And the perfect world, Lazard would go to work and Aaron would keep his feet to the fire. Yeah, hopefully Lazard has a bounce back year, but you can't bake on it. I mean, you just, oh my God. Robert Saleh is saying that their math was wrong. They thought Brees got over 1,000 yards rushing, but their math was off. Jesus, that is not a good look. Look, I mean, Kyle Rogers, of course, too, put this out there, too. Get familiar with Teeth Fuaga and the rest of this OT class. And I broke down our early top 5s this week. Look, I think there's still a lot of good tackles in this draft. And look, I know a lot of people are going to get on Bryce Huff because he's not going to give hometown gifts count. But look, he's deserved every freaking penny of it. He needs to get as much money as he can. Look, this is a business too where, especially if you're Huff too, I think part of it too with the Jets is they have so many pass rushers. It kind of hurts him a little bit because he wants to go somewhere else and proving to be an every down player. So I'll have more of a video on that coming up. I'll have a special Bryce Huff video. Sorry, you need to stop doing Brees and Bryce's. I will do a Bryce Huff video coming up, how the Jets can approach him this offseason, how that they can approach it. And then, of course, a lot of draft talk. And look, I think the Jets need to try to find a way to get Huff to come back. And look, here's the other thing, too, with this team. I think it's also going to have to be a lot of guys making some sacrifices. Look, Aaron Rodgers took a major discount to come here. But if you're CJ Mosley, if you want to keep this defense together, you're going to have to take a pay cut. Laken Tomlinson, if you want to have any career here with the Jets, you're going to need to take a pay cut. I mean, there's going to have to be some guys on this team that have some big cap hits that are going to say, look, I'll take a pay cut. And look, I'm not saying that they should take a pay cut, but if they want to keep this defense intact and keep Bryce Huff here, and they want to keep a guy that they really love in this locker room, it's going to be tough because the other part, too, is as much as I want to keep Huff here, the financials are they need to invest in the offensive side of the ball because you can make the case they can compete without Huff next year because they're still going to have 2 first-round defensive ends. They still have Quentin Williams. They still have Sauce Gardner. They still have the great secondary. The problem is they need to invest in the offense because this offense wasn't just – it couldn't work. You have 2 great weapons. You have a quarterback you're hoping is coming back. But you're going to have to invest heavily in the backup quarterback position. That's going to probably cost you $10, $11 million. You look at the Jets cap situation, they're probably going to have 50 to 60 if they work everything out perfectly. So there's $10 million right off the books there. You want to pay Huff $15 million? Great. But then you're probably going to have to pay if you want 2 offensive linemen, you know what that's going to cost you probably per year? Probably 12 to 15. So if you put the 2 together, you're minimum paying 25 to 30 million for 2 great offensive linemen. So you pay those 2 offensive linemen, you pay the backup quarterback, that's 40 million on your books. You have about 20, and then you have to figure, well, it's not a ton of money, but they add up. You want to resign Ashtyn Davis, you want to resign Zerline, you want to resign Morstead, you want to resign a depth defensive tackle position, you want to keep some of the guys here. There's going to have to be some trimming of the fat. And unfortunately for this Jet team, they're not in the best cap situation. And as much as I want to keep Huff, they also have to look at this too and go, as great as Huff is, Sauce Gardner is going to be coming up soon. Breece Hall is going to be coming up soon. Garrett Wilson's going to be coming up soon. You're going to have to pay them. You're going to have to pay them a lot of money. So if Breece Huff costs you the chance to keep those guys, is it worth it? And I love Huff. And that's the problem. People are going to say, oh, you hate Huff. You don't want him here. I want him here. I'm desperate to keep him here. But I also have to look realistically. The Jets invested in Will McDonald. They believe he's going to take a Jermaine Johnson jump. I think Jermaine Johnson's going to be an even better player next year. I do really believe that they've got a great defensive end in Jermaine Johnson. I believe they have a great defensive end potentially in Will McDonald. They have a great interior defensive tackle in Quentin Williams. I mean, you have to invest smartly in your team, and I get investing in pass rushers, but this team right now, if they invest in Huff, is it going to take away from the offense? And right now, this offense is brutal. They're drafting and signing a center, moving Tippmann to guard. I'm assuming left guard and Lake and go. I mean, it's a possibility, Kevin. I would definitely look into it. And look, I think you can look at this draft, and there's a couple guys that maybe you could see becoming a center. I mean, there's a couple of guys in this draft. Troy Fatanua, he's an interior offensive lineman, tackle, swing guy from Washington. I just think that you have to look at every possibility for this team to get better. And if there is a great center, for example, Connor Williams is a free agent, unrestricted free agent from the Dolphins. He's 27 years old. He's a good center. Would you pay for him? And I mean, look, you look at what his market value could potentially be. I mean, look, he's a 5-year veteran. He's probably, you're looking at $12 million a year, but if you bring him in as your center, you can then move Tippmann to guard. And I think Tippmann was a pretty good guard. So, I mean, there's some interesting centers out there. And the reason I keep going Miami, because again, it's the same system that the Jets run. You want guys that are consistent with the system. Another guy too is Aaron Brewer. He's the center from the Titans. He's 26 years old. He'll be an unrestricted free agent. Now, will the Jets still have the same offensive staff from the Titans from a year ago? I'm not sure, but I look at connections and I say, okay, maybe that's someone that they look in to bringing back. And I mean, I'm just looking at the tackle market right now. And look, sometimes you have to get creative. Maybe it's going to be really hard to get a tackle in free agency, but you can get guards. I mean, Tyron Smith's going to be a free agent, but how much is he going to cost a year? I mean, he's going to be 34 as well, but on a one-year deal, he's probably going to minimum cost $15 million a year, minimum. But you have to look at that. I mean, I'm looking at the right tackles now. I mean, it's an older market, but I mean, George Fant is going to be 32. You bring him back. I mean, to me, this free agency market is a lot better in terms of the interior offensive line and the tackles. And I mean, you think about it, everyone's looking for freaking tackles. I mean, the Jets won. They ended potentially the Bill Belichick reign of terror. We're talking a little bit of draft. We're talking a little about everything. We talked a little bit about Bryce Huff, who made the quotes. He's not taking any discounts this offseason. Look, Becton's a free agent, so you don't have to cut him. Look, Kev, Tomlinson's cap hit's going to be a lot next year. I believe it's between 12 and 15 off the top of my head, but don't quote me directly. Lakin's an interesting guy because on the one hand, he plays all the time. I don't think he's that great. I think the best bet for the Jets is he takes a pay cut because, look, it's one less position you have to fill. But here's the thing. If you go and get a great guard in free agency and you feel you got a good depth piece as a guard too, and you're keeping Tippmann at center, like if you feel we got a good starting guard next to AVT and we got a good rotational piece, then you could cut him. But I don't think they're going to cut him until they can find someone better. And look, they're not cutting Becton. Becton, I think, is going to walk out the door, though. Samini had the article where Becton said, look, I maybe want to come back and play with Rodgers for a year. Now, like I said with Becton, I think that this coaching staff doesn't trust Becton. They don't love Becton. So we will see how it goes. My big thing with Becton is two things. I think at the bare minimum, he has to be a right tackle. He can't be a left. But I almost feel at this point, he's better off going into guard. Like here, let me throw this scenario out there. Becton says, this is where I want to be no matter what. And again, I think that there's tension between the two. I can't prove it, but I just get this sense. If Becton says, look, I want to play with Aaron no matter what, Jets can say, okay, here's the thought. We'll keep you on the left side, but we're going to make you a left guard because we don't think you have the footwork to hang with the tackles. But we feel like you have the potential to be a Pro Bowl guard. And we have you in the middle with Tip and AVT. He says, okay, fine. But the other thing, too, is I worry about Becton. Yeah, Becton got through a full season this year. He was also the most penalized tackle and also had the most sacks for a tackle. I just don't think he can be a great left tackle. And even if you put him at a right tackle, like it's still a liability because if a team's smart and they know Becton gives up the most sacks, you don't think they're going to send their best pass rusher over there? You don't think that when they're playing the Bills, Von Miller's going to say, you know what, I'm going to go over that side. Or if they're playing the Dolphins, their best pass rusher isn't going to go over there. Or if they're playing the Patriots, they're not going to go over there. I just think he is a liability. But look, like I think like Kev is like a lot of people. Like, let me put this out there. Would you rather Becton on left guard or Tomlinson? I think with the potential with Becton, I think people would take it. But Tomlinson, like the one thing about Tomlinson, he's not great, but he plays every game. And with a team that's had this many offensive line injuries, it's hard to just get rid of someone that's that durable. And the problem, too, is like I think Tomlinson can be decent. The problem with Tomlinson is that it's such a revolving door on this offensive line. It's like, is he really this bad? Because Becton just tweeted this. Hold on. Been out for 2 years, came back and only missed one game after they wrote me off. Yeah, it wasn't as good as I wanted it to be, but F it, I came out healthy. Can't do nothing but thank the man above. Okay, so Becton is giving his 2 cents on this season. And look, I'll give credit where credit is due, Becton. You did a great job at staying healthy. The problem is, you weren't great when you're out there. And look, this is the thing too. Like the problem with this is the offense is so bad. Like the offense is so freaking bad. Like you need to figure out a way to get these guys paid. And look, the Jets are going to have to do a lot of roster evaluation this year. One interesting guy is John Franklin Myers. The John Franklin Myers is going to be $13 million a year. And here's a good thing for you guys. John Franklin Myers is an intriguing guy for this team because I think Bryce Huff is a better player. Bryce Huff, Jesus. Brees and Bryce are killing me. I think Bryce Huff is a better player. I really do. But here's the problem. JFM offers this team versatility because he can play inside and out. So here's a thought. Could they cut JFM and then put that money to Huff? But now you lose some versatility because as much as I love Jermaine and Will and Huff, they're edge guys. So now you're looking to try to find a guy that can play multiple positions. So that's a possibility for bringing Huff back, but a lot of it's going to come down to how they evaluate. And my biggest thing with the Jets is John Franklin Myers is a guy that I don't think packs the stat sheet where fans go, oh my God, he's such a great player. But he is a key cog to this defense. And the question this team's going to have to answer is, do we take a great edge pass rusher or do we keep a guy who, again, isn't as great but brings more to the table? BK Trainer, we need 4 offensive linemen. Look, I feel like you need a minimum 2. Minimum. If you get a good tackle, like let's put it this way. If you get Armstead from the Cowboys at left, you sign and you draft a kid to play right tackle, AVT, and you somehow get some backup help, I think that's fine. And I wouldn't hate having Lakin at left guard at that point. Again, we have to figure that out. If we pick next, I'm taking Fuaga. Yeah, I would too at this point. Look, it's going to be interesting because there's a possibility, like, if the Jets are picking in the top 10, here's my thought. There's always a run on quarterbacks, and we're at the point now, it happens every year. We get to this point where right around the national championship, we start talking about the quarterbacks, and by the time we get to April, they're all going to be pushing up the board. And what does that do? They push the quarterbacks go up, other prospects go down. So, like, here's a possibility. I don't think it's a likely one, but let's put this out there. Jets need offensive line. I don't think that's disputable. But what happened if Udonze, the great receiver from Washington, is there? I think he's going to be there, but do they take him? Here to me is the biggest wild card in the draft. And I do think because of the quarterbacks and needs for offensive line, he could drop. What if Brock Bowers is there? That to me is going to be the hardest one because technically, I think Bowers is probably, if you were to say if we were going purely on talent, is probably the second best overall player in this draft after Marvin Harrison Jr. And you can make the case that's your number 2 target. It's not a traditional receiver, but it's a great tight end. And this tight end room is solid for the Jets, but not great. I think it's solid. But then the question is, like, can you find another tackle? Now, if the Jets in free agency get 2 tackles, maybe they feel they're a little bit better off, but it's just one of those things too where I look at it and go, Bowers to me is the biggest wild card. If he's there, it's going to awfully be hard to turn him down, especially because this offense, how great a tight end can work. We can't afford Huff after McDonald pick. I'd sign and trade Huff for Pittman or another O tackle. Kev, we talked about this earlier in the video. I said this. I'm going to do a full video on this specifically, but I think that if you're the Jets, you try to trade for a second-round pick because I do think a team would give you a second-round pick for him. Maybe you have to kick in a late third to juice it, but I think you could get a second-round pick for Huff. I don't think a team's going to give up a great offensive lineman potentially, but if you can get into the top of that second round, could you get a starting caliber offensive lineman? Sure. Could you get a potential developmental quarterback? Absolutely. And who knows? What if you turn like let's throw this out there maybe. They really want Devontae Adams. What if the Jets tag Huff and say Vegas, we'll give you Huff. We'll give you a 3rd round pick maybe or a 4th round pick for Devontae. Jets get their great receiver. And that could be a possibility. Could they use him as a trade piece for a receiver? I don't hate that. But the thing, too, is it's a good and a bad thing. On the one hand, the Jets did a good job of protecting themselves. Like, worst case would be, could you imagine if Huff was having this year and they didn't have Will McDonald? Then again, I know there's a lot of people pissed because of the McDonald pick, but at the time, the Jets also had a ton of receivers. We didn't expect one of them to retire and Harmon to be a complete bust and Lazard to be god-awful, but here we are. And look, at that 15th pick, I didn't think there was a guy you're like, wow, like they have to have this guy. Hackett doesn't even play Rucker. We need wide receiver extend the field in free agency. We can get a receiver before a legit tackle. In the draft, Bowers would be the exception to me over the tackle. If it came down to a tackle receiver, like you need the tackle to make the receiver better. Because if the quarterback's getting hit and they can't throw it, that's the one thing too. And the other thing I think too, the Jets have to also think about too is making JFM a permanent defensive tackle. Like I would do that. And look, the other thing with the Jets too is you have the franchise tag. Again, it's going to kill your salary. And again, it's the average of the top 5 edge rushing salaries. But let's also throw this out there. If Huff fits free agency, that's probably what he's going to get. So if I'm the Jets, this is my thing. He cannot walk out the door for nothing. If you're going to lose him, tag him and trade him for a piece, whether it's a wide receiver. My biggest thing is get a 2nd round pick because there's 2 positions, and I won't go into full details, but here's my thought. In the 2nd round, you could get a developmental quarterback or you can get an offensive lineman. And as much as I love Bryce Huff, there's 2 positions that are more important than the pass rusher. Only 2 in the NFL. Offensive line and quarterback. And if they turn him into one of those where the Jets have their quarterback of the future developing and he becomes a starter quarterback for them, or if they get an offensive lineman that becomes an anchor for 7 or 8 years, whether it's a guard or a tackle, it's worth it. And as great as Huff is and as great as a pass rusher is in the NFL, especially now, if you don't have a quarterback and you don't have an offensive line, you can't compete. Jets couldn't compete this year because they didn't have an offensive line or a quarterback. Jets couldn't run the ball down people's throats because they didn't have a good offensive line. They couldn't survive a quarterback because they didn't have a good offensive line. I mean, look, the offensive line this year was a huge question. And unfortunately, it's gotten more questions. Definitely need to draft a QB, but let's not reach for one. Late rounds, 3 or 4 receivers and need round 1 or 3 if we can't get Devontae. I think BK Tram, I think get T. Higgins. If T. Higgins is a free agent, go get T. Higgins. I love T. Higgins. In his prime, would cost a lot of money, but doesn't cost you draft capital. I'd also look at Odell. I think you can get Odell a decent deal. Like you can look at free agency. I do think there's going to be a couple of receivers. Again, it's going to cost a lot of money, but you need to go out there and basically trade for a quarterback. So look, the other thing too is like you have to keep certain people on this team too. Like you want to keep Zerline and you got to keep Morstead. You got to make some cuts somewhere. And when a Huff for Pittman instead of 2nd round pick makes more sense for Aaron Rodgers, I kind of get that. But the thing too is, I don't know if you can do it straight up, maybe. But the thing too is, again, I get the future and winning now, but the Jets also need to get a future plan at quarterback. And unfortunately for them, look, if they feel there's a true franchise quarterback when they're picking, even if they need offensive line, they need to take the quarterback. I don't care what Rodgers thinks, but in a better world, I think what the Jets are going to try to do is draft someone on day 2 or day 3 to develop. I brought up Bo Nix earlier. I think he can be sitting there in round 2. I think Quinn Ewers will be there in round 2. I think Tua's brother will be there later. And look, keep it simple. I don't think Alt's going to be there. But here's the thing, keep it simple. I like the T. Higgins. I like the Huff. I don't know if it's going to work. Jordan Travis, I do agree with. Because to me, Jordan Travis is the perfect scenario for the Jets. Because I think he's got a lot of talent. I think there's going to be certainty. You might go even around 2 because they might love him that much. But the thing with him is you can have him sit for a full year, no pressure, redshirt a year behind Rodgers and whoever you sign as your backup, and then come out and compete. And look, I think it's perfect. Jordan Travis, is perfect for Rodgers because he's no immediate threat. It's like, look, Aaron, he's not even going to compete you this year. He's just going to sit in the meeting rooms, pick your brain, and then when you're in your 3rd year, when you're in the last year of your contract, he's going to be learning from you like for real. So the Jets basically are committing in a weird way to Rodgers saying, look, we still believe in you. We're giving you the 2 years, but he's our plan after the 2 years. I think that Travis would be perfect for that very reason. So keep it simple. Love it with the haymaker. I don't know how that's freaking legal in baseball. All I know is like if the Mets did that BS with Ohtani, every baseball owner would be complaining. Oh, Steve Cohen, why can they do that? But then, of course, the Dodgers are like, whatever. Whatever. Bill Belichick in his press conference won't talk about the future. Well, I don't think it's very bright. Yeah. And look, the Jets too, like the thing. Yeah, let's see. Right. Brees Hall not upset he didn't reach the 1,000 yards. Look, he got over 1,500 purpose yards with this terrible offensive line. Coming off of a freaking ACL, man. Like Brees Hall had an unbelievable year. So I can't fault him for that. But man, like I just look at this team and look, it's been I feel like this season has aged Jet fans by like 20 years. Like, am I honest? What left tackle will there be day one? Well, I don't think the big 2 will be there. Talise Fuaga from Oregon State will be there. Mims, I don't love because, again, he hasn't played a lot. I think it's going to come down between him and J.C. Latham. I would rather take Fuaga because I have this weird theory with Alabama linemen. Like, look, most of them I feel like by the time they get to the NFL are worn out or they've kind of maxed out. Like, it just feels like Alabama linemen, most of them just never reach their peak. Like, they just like they're okay, but there's never like, wow, that one was really great. I don't know what it is. It's just something about Alabama. Maybe I'm overthinking it a little bit, but that's my thought. There's still going to be a good tackle, and you even heard Baldinger talking about too. He's like, look, there's going to be 4 tackles that are probably going to go in the top 10. Now, the other thing too is, like Talise Fuaga, I think is going to move up. He's probably going to be the 3rd tackle taken off the board. This draft's going to be really interesting because it's going to come down to how much they love the quarterbacks, how much they're going to love these quarterbacks, and then how much these the great receiver and blockers are going to go. Based on what that's going to happen, look, I don't think Alt is getting to the Jets. I don't think the top 2 are getting the Jets. But I still think the Jets can get a great tackle in the top 10. I still think the Jets, if we're looking right now at Tankathon, they're right now at 9. Falcons are officially done. So now the biggest thing is just Chicago and Vegas. The thing, though, is right now the Jets have – it goes by winning percentage. Have a 412. Now, if they drop to – I got to look at – it goes then by strength of schedule. So then the one concern you'd have is right now the Jets have a 502. So they're not passing Minnesota. So the worst they're going to get is 11. But a lot of it depends on how Vegas does and also Chicago. Now, the thing with Vegas, though, is they're playing well. I think they're going to want to finish the season strong. And I think they're going to be playing a team without playing their starters. And I think Chicago wants to end the streak too. I think both those teams have a good chance to win. Obviously, we'll talk about this later tomorrow. To win today because we were guaranteed it because it wouldn't have helped us get a better draft pick. We win when we're not supposed to. Like, I get it. It just feels like that as Jet fans. I get that, Kevin. I get the frustration. Hey, Rich, how are you? Fixed it, Jet. What's that? Hey, Rich, how are you? How are you fixed it, Jet? How would you fix the Jets, Junior? Is that what you're asking? I just want to make sure I'm getting you. So just send me another thing in the chat. Yeah, the tackles, like, it just every time, like, it just feels like every tackle they take, you're always disappointed. Like, Alabama's a funny school because outside of like Tua, the quarterbacks, again, Hurts went to Oklahoma. It feels like the receivers are great from Alabama. If the offensive line, though, for whatever reason, I don't know what it is, they just never seem to live up to the hype. Kev, I don't think that. Look, I think Caleb Williams is going 1. I think he's going to Chicago. And look, there's a chance New England's going to get the 3rd pick because if Washington loses, they're get the number 2 pick. And here's the thing, and I'll get to you, Junior, in a sec. Look, the Patriots still, like, even if like they get a great quarterback, who's their coach? We don't know who their coach is. They don't have great skill set. Like, what receiver scares you on the Patriots? What tight end scares you on the Patriots? Like, they have decent running backs, decent offensive line, and plus, I don't think they're going to be that great. And if you move Belichick, one of the things is you remove his great defensive mind. Because one of the things is Patriots can't score, but they also have a great defense. So, Kev, I appreciate that. I'll look into it more. Again, I'm still doing a lot of my film study right now. I need to watch the Senior Bowl. Like, as we go through the process, I get a better idea. Look, there's so many freaking guys. And right now, too, the hard part is I'm not even sure who's fully declared. We're still getting a lot of the declarations in right now. So I'll hopefully have a better answer for you down the road. So make sure you like and subscribe so I don't miss that. How do you fix the Jets? O-line, 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 and did I mention O-line? And then maybe receivers. Look, they need O-line. It doesn't matter. I still think the receivers are not great, but your receivers are better when you have a good offensive line. Your running backs are better when you have a better offensive line. Your tight ends are better when you have a better offensive line. Your quarterback is better and healthier with a better offensive line. That's the other thing with Huff, too. Like, I know that we want to keep him, but if it comes down to keeping Huff and investing in his offensive line, invest in the offensive line. Line. Sorry, I don't see Williams being any better than Justin Fields. Guy is slow to throw, relies more off script. Look, Caleb Williams, to me, is a lot like Trevor Lawrence. I think when you look at his projections and the makeup, like physically, I think he can be a great quarterback. The things I worry about with him is the mental, because you saw him get emotional this year. You saw him have some issues in California. Look, I get it. He had a lot of pressure. He was the first NIL quarterback. But look, if you go to a big market team, you're going to get criticized. If you go to New England, even if you're Caleb Williams, that's the other thing too. If these quarterbacks are going to be expected to be the next Tom Brady, like, they're still trying to find the guy at the Brady. Like, Miami, doesn't matter. They're still going to compare you to Marino. Tua, you've been great. But how do you compare to Marino? Like, hell, we do as Jet fans. We're still looking for the next Joe Namath. So, look, I think Fields has really proven that he's a starting quarterback in this league. But, look, it's a crapshoot. Like, that's the draft. It's a crapshoot. I hope it's Jacoby Brissett. He's my number 1. Number 2 is Gardner Minshew, but I think he's going to get a starting contract. For me, my list is Brissett, Minshew. Actually, I probably put Minshew above Brissett. The problem is, though, I think Minshew's going to someone's going to give an opportunity to start or do one of these, compete for a starter, or do, like, I could see him maybe being signed by, let's just say, Chicago, to keep the seat warm until the rookie's ready, or one of these teams that drafts the quarterbacks, like, keep it ready for him. Who knows? Maybe he might get a big deal in Indianapolis. I mean, they're not paying their rookie quarterback, and he got injured early in the season. So I just think Brissett's going to have a good market, but I think he knows he's a backup. Minshew, I think, could compete for a starting job. What can we get? Look, we talked about this earlier. I think you can get a late round pick. I really think you're going to get a 5th or 6th round pick. I think they're going to trade him before the draft, get 5th round pick. Maybe the only way you can get like a 3rd round pick is if the Jets just decide, okay, we're going to give you Zach in like a 5th. Like if I'm the Jets too, I would consider that too, throwing something in to make it better than just a straight up late draft pick. Farrah Center, like, can't protect anyone. Look, well, Minshew's also got mobility. Minshew can run too. Justin Fields, I don't think is going to hit free agency. I think a team's going to trade for him. If Justin Fields was a free agent, I'd give him a shot to develop behind Rodgers. Again, we have to see who gets cut. I mean, I think we're going to see a lot of guys get moved. How much would it keep? A lot. Like, I think it's 11 or 12 million guaranteed. But they're not keeping Zach. I think that Zach doesn't want to be with the Jets. They just need everyone. Yeah, Minshew didn't lose yesterday. They put the 3rd string running back on the play of the season. That's on the coaching staff. Let's put it this way. Colts are in a position to win that game again in the playoffs. It wasn't regarding Minshew. At least we ended Melvin, optimism. I love it. I mean, and look, as bad as the season is, the fact that they went 17 weeks with Zach Wilson, Boyle, and Simeon and still won 7 games to me is a freaking miracle. Gum to your head. What's our starting online? Man, you want to kill me, man? Come on, keep it simple. Like, damn, that's freaking tough. Gun to my head. Probably one of the rookies at tackle, AVT at guard, Tippmann at center. Lakin at guard, maybe Runyon at guard, and then they pay for a veteran tackle. I can't give you the exact names, but that's what it is. How do you think? Who do I think the Jets will, or do I think he's going to sign? Like, do you mean like how much? Belichick would have called Tad just to give 1,000 yards. He hates us that much. Yeah, well, it's good also to send him. That's the other thing too. Like, as much as it's frustrating with the draft pick today, it's nice to just, stick it to Belichick at least one last time, because it would have been really tough to lose 16 straight, him go on a high note, him go out with that winning streak, and just stick it to the Jets one more time. Look, this doesn't help Belichick. Belichick, I don't think is going to be in New England. Heck, in some ways, I want him to be in New England still, because I don't think he's a good coach anymore. I think and this is the problem I have with everyone just saying, oh, just send Bill Belichick to the Chargers and he'll make everything better. Look, I think Belichick will help a team defensively. But when the stuff comes out that he wanted to keep Matt Patricia, defensive coordinator, as an OC, how he wants to keep all of his friends on his coaching staff, how he wants to keep his kids on his coach staff, and how he wants all these personnel choices, it's not working. It's not working. I mean, I know everyone loves to pick on the Jets for their dysfunction, but the Patriots' dysfunction, it hasn't been that far off. It hasn't been that far off. Robert's out. We start off 2024 1-0. Look, I love the optimism, but look, there's certain things like the Jets need to re-sign Ashton Davis. They need to re-sign the special team staff. But Huff's going to be the big question mark. And I'm going to have a full video on that, so make sure you like and subscribe. But again, Jets finish off the streak. They improved to 7-10, and that's going to be a wrap on this season, which never seemed to end. But we will have a lot for you this offseason. Make sure you stick with us for all the latest on the New York Jets. Give us a like, give us a subscribe if you join us after the video. Give us a comment. I'll answer the question in the next video. Thanks so much for joining us. I'm your host, Owen Rich, and this is Rich Sports Talk.